Hello everybody. So I'm Jennifer
Marcel.
from J&M Explorations, and we're sitting here today with somebody pretty special to us too.
That's right.
Yeah,
Very special.
we're sitting here with writer, director, producer,
Producer, actor.
actor, amazing, one of our favorite people on the earth, Mr. Joe Bandelli.
Bandelli.
Thanks,
Going
guys.
on, Joe?
That was an amazing intro. Thank you.
Joe, I had to laugh so hard. I was looking, we did a little research and I was on your Facebook and I was laughing incredibly hard at your pronunciation of your name on Facebook. I have to hold on. Where did I put it? It's so funny.
It's not correct.
I know, but it's just hilarious. Joe Bobel's Bandelli, wait, Bandelli, Levy.
I think it's Jobles, Bandolini, or Bandela, something like that. I don't know.
Best thing ever. It was hilarious.
It's funny. I think a lot of times whenever I talk with people about Hell House and all that kind of stuff, Steve is the one that always leans towards like the more supernatural dark stuff. I always like in my head whenever we make these movies, I'm always making the spoof version of the movie we're making in my head. So I always like to keep it light with people and joke around. So that's where that comes from.
Exactly. And I feel like that's just such a hallmark of who you are. And when we're looking over some of your work, it was just so you would see that you bring joy into what you do. And that's isn't like that is living the dream, right?
I,
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I said a long time ago, my goal, I know that a lot of times when you have, especially in the entertainment industry, if you have success, typically like money and fame are like things that come along with that success. But for
Mhm.
me, I've always said like you can't live by other people's definitions and expectations of what a success is. You have to live by what yours are. And for a
Right.
really long time, I've always said my goal is to be a filmmaker where I can make movies with people that I like for the rest of my life. And for the last 15 years, I've been lucky enough to do that. And I continue to hope to be able to do that for the rest of my life. But yeah, I mean, I think it's on my website. It's like if you're not smiling and enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it?
Mm, right, exactly.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. You want to kick it off with a
I
question?
will. My question is, um, how did Hell House fall into your lap? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, sure. So I finished film school in 2009 and then I was living in New York and I was working in sketch comedy. I was performing sometimes, not performing sometimes, directing, and I was kind of like building my short films and my repertoire toward being whatever I think was like leaning toward me making my first feature film. And in 2013, I finally made the decision that I was going to leave like all of my part-time jobs and everything, and I was going to go make my first feature. And around that time, I had a friend, Adam Schneider, who plays Mac in Hell House. Him and I had known each other. We worked with each other for years before. We both had kind of stints in live production. And he brought up to me that he had a friend who was looking to make a horror movie, and he knows that I love horror, and he knows I'm a horror filmmaker. And he asked if I knew anyone that would want to produce for his friend. And I was like, yeah, I would absolutely love to do it. And he was like, oh, I thought you were going to make yours. And I was like, yeah, but I realized really young in or early in my career, a lot of times we've been really like lucky with everything that has happened with Hell House. But when you look back on the Hell Houses, we've made five in like 11 years. And usually for a director to take the time and the effort to really go through things and really work it out, you're lucky if you make one every 2 years. Usually a director will make a film one every 3 to 5 years, depending on who the director is. And especially in the low budget world that Steven and I live in, like we're not fortunate enough at this point in our careers, we're just banging out one per year. And I also don't think either one of us would want to do that as well from like a content and like quality perspective. So I made this decision really early on that if I was going to be a filmmaker, I was going to have to do more than just writing and directing because I wanted to make more than, two movies a decade or three movies a decade. So I told Adam, like, hey, I'd love to meet your friend. And he introduced me to Steven. And at that point, I believe Steven just transitioned the first draft of Hell House from narrative to found footage. And he explained to me, like, hey, like, I wanted to do it narrative. This is the whole thing. What do you think? And I read it. I thought it was great. I had a lot of notes because I'm a very opinionated person. And most of my notes and most of the things that I explained to Steve was like, hey, like you wrote, like I can still see in this draft parts that are supposed to be narrative. Like you have to shift this to make it be a little bit more believable that someone would have a camera or whatever. So that was like a big part of it. And then the second thing that he had was he already had met Angie and he already knew that we were going to shoot at the Waldorf. So those two things were kind of like the things that already came. And usually a lot of times producers are the ones that go out and like find a director, find a writer director, find the money and all that kind of stuff. This was kind of a little bit of the reverse. And interestingly enough, I'm sure everyone knows this because Steve's the creator and he's the kind of, the creative voice behind this whole thing. It's interesting because Steve, in essence, hired me to be in a role that I'm kind of overseeing him. So we never really had that like someone's boss kind of thing.
Right.
And I think one of the cool things about working with Steve, especially early on, was he was very transparent with me of what his strengths and what his weaknesses were. And I knew that a lot of the things that he didn't know or like was still kind of learning earlier in his career, I was really good at. So a lot of the things, like at least on the technical side, like how to shoot something, what it would look like, who to hire, bring those people. That's how I sort of was like, okay, I can fill out and sort of you can come with the idea, I can tell you how we're going to execute that idea. And that's sort of how like the beginnings of everything. I think Steve and I met one another and like we both have love spoof movies and love like Airplane and Naked Gun and those kinds of things. So I think we connected on a lot of that stuff, and I think we realized that like, hey, we would both have a nice little yin and yang kind of relationship for starting off this movie together.
Right. It seems really, really collaborative, like you guys just fit together so perfectly. And is it typical for producers to stay with with each piece of the franchise, or is that kind of unique for you guys?
So it's not it's usually unique if the producers leave. Like typically what would happen over the course of a franchise is the director will leave and the director won't
Right.
want to do anything anymore, but the producers usually stay on and stay consistent. The thing that's unique from a producer standpoint on this one is usually more producers will come on as the budgets get bigger, as things. I've been very fortunate. And we've been really fortunate that like ultimately Steve is always number one and I'm kind of number two. And it's always sort of been like the two of us kind of figuring things out together. And usually the more success you have, the more people watch things, the bigger things get. That's when people start kind of poking in and giving their opinions and weighing in, and then
Right.
that's when you have to build the teams. Been very fortunate that we've never had to do that. And it's always been just sort of the two of us. And from Steve's perspective as a filmmaker, that's really rare to be able to make something that you want to make without having many people or any people tell you, hey, we're going to give you money for this, but also you have to cut this or add this or whatever. Like Steve's pretty much had a lot of autonomy. And then from our relationship, more early on than later, because I think as we grew as filmmakers, Steve sort of figured out exactly how he wanted to do stuff. So he didn't have as many like questions for me creatively in terms of like, what do you think? He still asked my opinion, but back when we made the original trilogy, it was a lot of like, what do you think? How should we do this kind of things? And now we're sort of at a place where it's like, it's less of that, but still me supporting him. I always say as a producer, your number one job is to clear every hurdle for the director so that they can be as creative as they possibly can.
And I think he did
He did.
mention
I was
that,
going to say
right?
that
He
he
mentioned
said
that
the exact
how
same
important
thing.
you were. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't I'm sure we'll get into this, so I might be saying a story ahead of time, but one of the things that like, after doing 5 movies with Steven, actually 6, because we did 825 Forest Road together,
Mhm.
you learn, I mean, I feel like I know what Steve is thinking all the time, and like we kind of have this like back and forth where I feel like we don't even need to talk sometimes because we kind of know how each other thinks. But like one of the moments or one of the things that I'm the most proud of in this franchise is I'm proud of the whole like chaos, like malfunction scene in the first movie.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we had everything, like we asked Angie to like help us find extras or whatever, and we had no idea that we were going to get close to 200 people to show up and a fire department and like the EMTs and the police. Like we had no idea that's what was going to happen. And I remember the day that everyone came and showed up, it was one of those things where it was like, I was like, okay, this is overwhelming. Like we have a really small crew. How are we going to do this? And I remember just being like, I got it. And I went to Steve and I was like, Steve, all you need to do is worry about what your main cast is doing and get and direct them. Like I will take care of every other thing in this. And then I, with our AD and a couple PAs, I was like, great, we're breaking these extras into sections. We are all going to be in charge of a specific section. And basically, we're going to put this section outside in the line. This section will be in the house. This section will be in the basement. And it really, like, from a creative standpoint, it was really fun for me to be able to say, like, okay, cool. I will make sure that when, whatever the final product is, the main focus of what's happening with our main cast, that's all going to be Steve. I will do everything I can to work around him and fill in all the gaps everywhere else. And like that was really fun too, because it's guerrilla filmmaking. It's kind of like figuring out stuff. And I come from a background where, as you grow and do bigger and bigger budgets, there's more people. So many people are designated to different things. If you get into like the higher union status of things, you can't do other things in other people's departments. And for us, we never worked like that. It was always like, oh, if you need to figure out something, like just figure it out. And I remember in that tour group, you guys, I'm sure know this, that Steve is the one who's operating the camera with that
Yeah.
main tour group. I was with the group in a black hoodie, all covered in black, and I was at the back of that group. And basically, I know you guys have stayed at the Waldorf. There's trap doors and things all over the place. What I did was I would follow his group in, and then whenever like we got to a trap area, I would crawl out of it when the camera was facing a different direction, go into the next room and cue the next group of people to start moving so that when they came into the group and there was a bunch of other, and I was like crawling all around, and like to the point that when you get to the part, we show it from two different perspectives, but when Mac comes in and he's like follow me, and he goes
Yeah.
on his way out, the last person out the door before the door shuts with him, it's me in a black hoodie, and it's me whole. You can't see it because it's from behind me, but I have the walkie-talkie communicating to the police and the fire department, and I'm cueing them as I'm running out the door with the person who has the camera, so that once we come outside and turn the corner, all the police and all
Oh,
the
they show up, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
like that was so much fun to do, and that's the thing
Yeah.
I'm most proud of, because that type of setup in Hollywood or on a bigger budget, that would have cost millions of dollars to do. And we did it with like 6 or 7 people and, just a lot of like creative, fun problem solving.
Yeah.
Amazing. To me, it was like a symphony,
I mean, all that
right?
chaos, though, that's what makes found footage so good.
Right.
It's so realistic. Like you
Yeah.
feel like you're in the moment
Yeah.
with the
And
people.
the other part of this too is like not only did we have to like execute it properly, but we also had to make sure that no one got hurt. And like
Right.
Right.
everyone was safe. Everyone knew like, hey, when you're running, you're not really running. It's kind of fast walking and like all that. And I remember I was like really, really, really specific of like every time we did something, Steve, Adam helped out with this, and myself would have like a safety meeting with everyone and say, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to look like. Because you're not just working with actors who are professional and kind of know what they're doing, but still everyone was really young in their careers. You're also dealing with people who've never done this before, so they don't understand how it's supposed to work. Like when they see people running and screaming or like car chases, people probably think those cars are driving 150 miles per hour and they're really driving like 30 miles per hour.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Right.
so a lot of that stuff is stuff that like we were always really good at making it safe, especially with the basement, because the basement ceiling is like
yeah. Oh, I know.
Crazy. Yeah.
right. So that was a lot
Crazy low.
of, yeah. And I say as we've moved on in the franchise, I always say to people that I think Steve used to make me and call me the logic police, because I would always tell him like, hey, this doesn't really make sense why the camera would be shooting, and he'd be like, oh, come on, Joe. He's like, people will buy it, and I'm like, yeah. So we'd have a lot of those things, but as we got further and further along, I think one of the bigger parts of my job was always making sure that not only the cast was like safe and felt like they were like in good hands, but the crew was as well.
Oh, that's
Yeah, 100%. And Angie has connections.
Does.
I'm
Does.
not surprised she got so many people there to be with you guys because
Yeah. I'm
she's
so
like,
happy that like both Steve and I are happy that like because of all of the success of Hell House, like we're happy to see her like actually be able to utilize that to like make money for herself and like build her haunt and everything. Like that's so cool. Like when you see all these different people who kind of started together and kind of grew, and they actually get to still like take advantage of the opportunities that the film and the franchise have provided. That's so awesome.
yeah. And I think not only that, but by her having those events at the house, I mean, that's bringing in more fan base for
that's
you
right.
guys.
Yeah.
Totally.
Every time she has an event, it's just like to us, because we see it in the Hell House Fanatics group on Facebook. We see it. We see new people joining. We were talking to people while we were there. People who were bringing people who had never seen the movie
Right.
before. And so by her, I just think it's just, again, another wonderful collaboration
Well,
piece.
in the 90s, I think a lot of like movies that didn't get theatrical runs and like went to VHS or went to DVD, you would learn like later on that they became cult films because once they went to that market, people would buy it and like love those movies. And I think that's kind of what Hell House has become. It's this little like cult thing that I think found footage fans, horror fans really love it. But like as you get more into the public, less it's not like over time it's grown and grown and grown to the point that like we said earlier people will be like, oh, there's this thing that I heard or I saw a thread on Reddit or a fanatics group or something, and someone recommended this to me and I loved it and I didn't realize there's three sequels or four sequels. So that's kind of been one of those things. And like again, what like you said, Angie, you guys, all of our fans are a big part of how this whole like thing is going, and we always say we're a word of mouth franchise. So it all
Yeah.
comes hand in hand, helps each other.
Yep.
Mhm. I'm sorry, I just want to say something because he mentioned Adam Schneider.
Who? Steven?
No,
Oh, Joe, yeah.
Joe just mentioned Adam. And we found out this little
Oh.
short. You
Oh
guys
yeah,
did.
Hilarious. The
is
Sarah
the one that one
Sarah
that's
McLachlan one.
McLachlan.
Oh my
the one that
God.
Steve directed?
Yeah, the one where he's the
Oh, that
Thomas
is
Jefferson, right?
hilarious.
Yeah.
Cors.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so funny. Just great.
Yeah.
Your
But you
humor
guys
just
were
keeps,
younger then, right? You said you knew him a long time, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I think I met Adam probably in like 2009 or something. I was really lucky. I've been very lucky a lot in my career. When I finished film school, I started working as a teacher's assistant at the film school I went to, and then was, getting as much set experience as I can. And Adam was working at Best Buy. And he worked for the district manager of Best Buy, and he basically was like learning how to utilize live production because like at that point no one knew what live streaming was. So Adam was like in the process of doing that, and occasionally he would shoot these fun videos for like the employee engagement at Best Buy. And when the live thing sort of started becoming something and taking off in 2010, the like employee engagement aspect sort of fell away. And so the district manager was like, we need to hire someone. So he recommended me, and they basically hired me. And my job for about a year and a half was to shoot sketch comedy for Best Buy employees in the whole like district of Manhattan. So like I would
Wow.
basically, yeah, it was like a whole like I would like come in on Monday to our like district office. I would write a sketch based on like the culture within Best Buy. Then on Tuesday I would go shoot it on Wednesday, and then I'd edit it on Thursday and deliver it on Friday. And like I did that for a year and a half. But that was how like Adam and I became friends. And like occasionally I would pull him in because I'd be like, "You're really funny. Let me get you in this." And all the employees knew who he was. So that's how we like became friends. And that's how he learned of like
Hmm.
my horror and all that kind of stuff. And that's what led to
Mhm.
Steven and I.
So great.
So,
Did it
okay.
go nationwide or did that just stay within?
It
Did
was
it?
just the district. Yeah, you know
Okay.
what's interesting? You know when you like see or meet someone who's like a pioneer and you're like, man, this person gets it. The guy, his name was Phil Chakra, or his name is Phil Chakra. He was the district manager for Best Buy in New York. So I think there was 8 stores under him. He saw an opportunity. He saw something that no one else saw. And so basically every Wednesday, I think, was when the employee engagement thing was like so smart because he always wanted to do something. He wanted to create content so that the employees could have something fun to like watch and be engaged with, which again was ahead of his time, especially for a retail company. And then the second aspect of it was he created this thing called Live at Best Buy, which is every Wednesday were when albums came out. And usually whoever the headliner was, like if it was Dr. Dre or Lady Gaga, they would come to the Union Square Best Buy, and he got them to perform one or two songs. And then Adam, me, and a couple other guys would shoot it and live stream it in the early days of live streaming. And like eventually, like once like the headquarters of Best Buy found out, they shut Live at Best Buy down. They shut the employee engagement down because they were like, you don't know what you're doing. This is a retail company. And so all of that stuff went away like 2 or 3 years later. But like that was like the beginning of like live streaming and the beginning of like that. And he was
Yeah.
so far ahead of like what was going on. And like if he ever switched to be in media or entertainment, he would have been one of those people that was like, he was one of the best bosses I've ever had, and just like forward thinking, and it's just cool environment and a very, very sort of comedy first, let's have fun environment, which was great for me at least.
So we'd asked Steven about, well, everybody knows this anyways, that he was inspired by the movie Lake Mungo.
Yep.
Was there a movie that inspired you?
Paranormal Activity for me.
I knew it. I knew that was going to be the
Yeah,
answer.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm so it's so weird how things just kind of like happen and whatnot. When Steve came to me, I knew of Blair Witch. I knew there was a movie called Cannibal Holocaust from the
Yeah,
80s that had an element in it. And I knew of Paranormal Activity, and I loved all of the Paranormal Activity films, but I didn't love Blair Witch. It made me sick when I saw it in theaters. Like I didn't love a lot of that stuff, and I knew of a couple other films. But once we started making it, I was like, this is probably a little bit more like I should educate myself on this. And that's where I started watching like Rec and Grave Encounters
yeah,
and
yeah,
VHS, and I started really getting involved in it, and then going back to like UFO abduction. So I like as we were making them, I was watching and educating myself. And I think weirdly enough, somehow when I moved to Los Angeles, that just happened to like fall into my lap of me getting to direct Unknown Dimension and actually tell the story of how they made the Paranormal Activity film. So
yeah. I love that.
it wasn't like a I think Lake Mungo, like if you watch Lake Mungo, there are similarities between Lake Mungo and Hell House, and I think Steve
Mhm.
utilized a lot of that for
Yeah,
inspiration. I think for me it was more the concept of like, oh wow, this is really cool because in Paranormal Activity, they just left the camera there and utilized the night and all that stuff. And I
yeah,
was like, that's a cool thing that we can try to utilize certain aspects. And I think I'm pretty sure it was Steve's idea, not mine, but that's where like a lot of the security camera footage in the Abaddon helped with a lot of that first like big sequence that we were talking about because it wasn't just the person recording, it was all these other cameras, and that was
yeah.
sort of like us trying to like maybe be like Paranormal Activity a little.
So, as you being such a fan of paranormal activity and of that, the whole genre, how was it like getting to, because I think we determined we were listening for your voice in Unknown Dimension as the interviewer,
Right.
especially towards the end when Oren Pelly was getting up. And how was it to like meet and get to talk with like the Vicious Brothers and Eduardo and Katie and
Such
Mika? Just,
Yeah, it was such an incredible opportunity, and like I said, it was every time you make a movie, like there's a thousand different ways to make a movie, and like sometimes you're given the money and you can go make it, sometimes you have to find it yourself. And the cool thing about that was, I had a friend, and again, this is very Hell House inspired. But I had a friend, his name is Anthony Massey, and I met him through a friend that I went to film school with. And Anthony had been a producer in LA, and he made a lot of the documentaries that were retrospective look back. So he did the 25-year anniversary of Halloween. He did a documentary called His Name Was Jason. He did one on Hellraiser, and he did one called Still Screaming, which is right before the fourth Scream came out. And they were all just kind of like look backs at the franchise of how they were made, and they had cast and crew and all that. I got connected with him, and he was telling me that his friend who lives in Pennsylvania, his son and him watched Paranormal Activity. And when they got done watching it, usually they would watch special features. And his son was like, oh, can we watch special features so we can see how they made that? And his dad was like, there actually aren't any. Like, there's actually no documentation anywhere of how they made any of these movies. And so that's how they came up with the idea of like they wanted to do that. And I was in the early stages of becoming this guy Anthony's friend. So I wasn't going to be like, oh, let me be involved. Let me do it. Let me do it. I was sort of like, okay, cool. Like, that's awesome. I wish you guys luck. And then that was around the time that we were going to shoot the third Hell House movie. And Anthony told me, he said the guy who's the dad of the little kid, his name is Nate. And he was like, he's like, you should give Nate a call while you're shooting the third movie if you need any help. Like, he's about an hour away from Lee Heighton. And I was like, oh, cool, no problem. So when we got to shoot the big insomnia sequence in Hell House 3, I called him and I was like, "Do you want to come down and like kind of check things out?" So he came down, he walked through the space. He's a big fan, so he loved it. And then when we like broke people up into like managing teams, I had him do that for one of them, and he was like so happy and like loved it. And then at the end of like right before he left, he was like, "You write and direct too, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's actually like my main thing." I was like, "I sort of fell into the producer thing because of Hell House." And he's like, "Have you ever spoken with Anthony about Unknown Dimension?" Or it wasn't called Unknown Dimension yet, but he's like, "Have you ever spoken with him about it?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "I'm gonna recommend you to him because I think you would be great at it." And I was like, "Oh, cool, thank you." And like a week later, I was back in LA, and Anthony calls me, and he's like, "One, I never thought you were gonna call Nate. Like that was really cool that you like actually had him come and be a part of it." And so thank you. And then he's like, number two, like, I've been talking to you about like this documentary. Like, I never thought you would want to do it. I only thought you wanted to work in like found footage and narrative. And I was like, no, I'd love to do it. I was like, I have so many ideas for it. And he's like, okay, cool. He's like, well, the other producer was Rachel Bolofsky, who runs Screamfest, which is like the big horror festival in Los
Yep.
Angeles. And he's like, why don't you like in 3 days, like Rachel and I will meet you for lunch and we'll sort of talk about your ideas. And I was like, great. 3 days later, I met them for lunch and I handed them a 50-page outline for what I wanted to do in the movie with a full like 60-person interview list. And
Oh,
I think I just like they were like, "Holy shit, you did this without us asking you to do anything." And so they hired me on the spot. And like it was really weird because Rachel had the connections to Oren, Katie, and Mika from Screamfest because Screamfest
mhm.
was the first festival that Paranormal Activity ever screened at. So they asked him she asked Oren, who lives in New Zealand, when he was coming back, if we can interview him. So I met the three of them. Oren showed me, I had like an hour interview with him outside of the house in San Diego. And then I sat with him for about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. And I was like, this guy was so incredibly nice and humble. And then Katie and Mika each gave me like 3 hours each. And both of them were sweet. Everyone was awesome. Actually, my favorite thing about this franchise is Katie and I have become really good friends. And she's like, I love that girl. She's such a sweetheart. And basically, it was like we had the three of them. We went to Paramount and tried to get them to like give us the funding to like make the documentary, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were like, "No, you can't do this." And so Anthony was like, well, "We're going to fair use everything, so we don't have to actually get their permission to do stuff." So I was like, "Okay, cool. Never done that before." And just one by one, it was like because we got Oren, we got Chris Landon, and because we got Chris Landon, we got the whole cast from the marked ones, and like basically like slowly everyone started happening like coming through, and then we couldn't get Catherine Newton. We couldn't get Adam. I think Goldsman. I think no, that's not his name. But the guy who was the president of Paramount. We couldn't get a lot of big people. And then one day Anthony was like, "Hey, I got us an interview with Jason Blum at Blumhouse," and I was like, "That's awesome." And so
Yeah.
when I sat down with Jason, he was so cool, and like he gave me his number, and he's like, "Put your number in my phone," and he's like, "Who haven't you got?" And we like gave him like the list of 5 or 6 people, and he's like, "Okay, cool." He's like, "Let me do some work for you." And the next day he text messaged me, and he was like, "You should be getting emails from the president of Paramount and all these other people." And like that like opened like kind of like Pandora's box for us. And then we basically got, I'd say 90% of everyone we wanted to get. The one person that like everyone was like, you should get him just because he was the person who recommended changing the ending was Steven Spielberg. And I was like,
Yeah.
kidding me? I'm like, like that would have been, but it didn't work out. But yeah, it was
I'm good.
honestly, I know this was like the very, very, very long version to answer that story or that question, but it was like, it was just such a cool way to see how things came. And then by the time we got done making it, Paramount came to us and was like, "Can we license this movie and buy it from you to put it on Paramount Plus?" And we were like, "Yeah, sure." So that was so cool. It was such a great experience. And like I said, with Katie and a lot of other people from that franchise, I've like now have relationships with them that I feel like I would have never had prior to making this. So
That's so
We
awesome.
wanted to meet them so bad, and they were in Connecticut here at the one of the Hartford events a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh, missed it.
We'll meet them
Someday,
someday.
yeah,
someday, hopefully.
they still do a lot of conventions. I don't think Mika I think still has a little bit to do with the entertainment industry. Katie doesn't act anymore. She's kind of moved on in her career, but they're both really sweet. If whatever happens, if they're ever at a place that you guys are at, let me know because I'll talk to them and I'll tell them to kind of make some time for you guys.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Did you have another question or
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
because Joe,
Yes.
I want to talk about another Cabin in the Woods movie. Mm,
Okay.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah,
Might have heard that a couple times in the movie, right?
that's my
I
thing.
mean, it was hilarious.
So,
It was hilarious.
Thank you.
and second time around, the watching it again and realizing. Go ahead. What
Yeah,
did
the first time I watched it, because you got to watch something more than once because you're gonna miss something.
That's
Guaranteed.
purposely the type of movie that was made so that it's rewatchable. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, I learned some
So
things from Hell House to do in this.
yeah, yeah. But the scenes where you hear the news the news comments, the commentary is freaking hilarious.
I
And you
can't.
Well,
can miss that if you don't
I,
pay attention.
so listen, I don't talk about this a lot publicly because I don't really like as you're growing and as you're learning and making movies, like you make mistakes. And what happened was that movie was originally called Seclusion, and that was the movie that I was directing when or was going to direct when I met Steven. And so the year that we shot and made Hell House, that same year we made Seclusion. And what happened was we kind of started the whole post-production process or whatever. And when we got to the point of like both movies were ready to like be sold or get sales agents or whatever, I remember that's when we met Joe Dane from Terror Films, and
Yeah.
he had like this small boutique company that was just starting to grow. And when I had like the same thing with Seclusion, I had like a small boutique company like Terror Films that was interested, and then I had a bigger company. And I was like, ooh, maybe with Hell House, we'll do the smaller boutique, and maybe with Seclusion, we'll do the bigger one. And that was one of the worst decisions that I've ever made in my career because one, it was a really hard movie to make because I wore a lot of the hats by myself. And I definitely bit off
That was
more.
one of my questions.
Yeah, he's like, how did
Like,
you
what
do
was
it
it like
all?
wearing
It's
all
hard.
those hats? I
It was
mean,
really, really hard.
difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so, but then the other thing was is I signed a not a great agreement, and I basically lost the rights to make it the way I wanted to make it. And so the movie was always written as a horror comedy, and it was always written to poke fun at the cabin in the woods genre.
Yeah.
And when it finally came out, not only was the name changed from Seclusion to the most generic name of Cabin Fear, the poster changed. They wanted to name it Lake Fear 2 because they had a movie called Lake Fear that did well for them. Just a whole bunch of things of like marketing and things that I just had no idea about. And what they did was they wound up cutting out all of the comedy except for like one or two like over the top things. And it wound up becoming a generic cabin in the woods movie. And I'm not one of those people that harps on like you learn from your mistakes, you always make mistakes. And I think
Hmm.
every filmmaker will tell you by the time they finish making their movie, if they could go back, they would do it differently because they'd learned so much stuff in the process of making it. That's why I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of filmmakers when you ask them what's their favorite movie, they say the next one. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's true. And so I was very much like move on to the next thing, work on other things. Other things were happening with Hell House and other projects in my career, and I just kind of let it go. And I know that like a lot of people didn't like it, but I was like, you know what? I made my mistakes. I'm moving on. And then when Steve and I went to go make 825 Forest Road, the other producers who were a part of that from Epic Level Entertainment, they contacted Steve and Steve brought me on. And when he tried to bring me on initially, they didn't want to work with me. And like the thought was they didn't want to work with me because they produce their own movies and it's three of them and they always do their own producing. And Steve sort of like kind of championed me and was like, "Hey, I really want Joe to work on this. Like, he does everything with me. Like, I'd really want to get him on." And so they met me, they loved me, we made the movie. And when we were done with post production, they all were in LA and we all went out to lunch and they bought me like a big Captain America like shield. There, like it was a really really sweet thing and we got along really well. And I was like, quick question for you. When you guys met me or when Steve first started talking about me, like I know you didn't want to work with me and I assumed that was because like you guys do your own things. Is that right? And they were like, no, we saw Cabin Fear and it sucked. And I was like, oh shit. And and I was like, wow, I was like, I didn't think that had an impact. And I was like, because like again, I wrote and directed that. I'm like, why would that impact my producing career? But I remember talking with Steve and telling him, I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, I wonder how many people saw that movie and were like, yeah, that guy sucks. We don't want to work with him. And Steve was like, well, he's like, why don't you get the rights back and like make it the way you wanted to make it? And like it just so happened that we were like hitting that term of like, I can get the rights back. And so I went to my editor who did Unknown Dimension with me, and he's one of my closest friends, and he's a huge comedy guy. And I went to him and I was like, hey, I was like, watch the footage. Tell me if you think this is something that like should we revisit? Like I don't know if I want to. I know it's going to be a whole thing. And he watched everything and he's like, man, he's like they left so much comedy on the floor, or like the cutting room floor. He's like, I think we can make at least the first three quarters of the movie funny, but the last quarter, there's not a lot of characters. Like it's more serious. So like, and then basically we started working on things. We got the rights back. And as we were going through the scene in the movie with Carter and Trish when they're introduced in the car, um, there's a breathing exercise that Carter's doing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like you make it sound like he's meditating, but he's getting a blowjob.
yeah.
And so I wrote it and directed it a specific way. And then when Nick was editing it, he introduced the breathing exercise. And when he showed it to me, I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And sort of it sort of spawned this whole thing of us again, like Steve and I, Nick and I were both huge spoof movie guys. We love Not Another Teen Movie. We love Scary Movie. We love all of those movies, and then of course all the stuff from like Zaz and Mel Brooks. And so I was like, this is like an opportunity, this is an opportunity to have every person in the movie be a straight character while chaos is happening around them. Because a lot of times, like when you watch the Naked Gun movies, Leslie Nielsen is playing everything straight, but it's wacky of what's going on around him. And we were like, we could do this sort of self-aware radio and create these characters that are basically telling these people you're idiots. And because I directed it so straight, like it's going to read significantly more funny. And so we created a lot of that stuff and then we utilized a lot of the things. So the cast never knew we were making that movie, but they knew we were making a horror comedy. I just don't think they, because we didn't know we were making a spoof. So then when it came time to name it, I was like, this movie turned into a generic Cabin in the Woods movie. Let's just call it another Cabin in the Woods movie. And Terror Films like took it on. And I remember even when we were trying to come up for a tagline for the movie, Nick and I wrote the tagline of "All they wanted was a house in the forest." And
Right.
we thought it was hilarious. And Joe at Terror Films was like, "It's too subtle. It's like this movie's like a laugh out loud. Like don't like it's not going to work." And like I was racking my brain, and I'm like, "What the hell can I call this?" And then one day I was like, "You know what? If the movie's supposed to make fun of the genre, I'm gonna in the tagline make fun of myself." So the tagline from the movie became from one of the guys who brought you Hell House LLC. No, not him, the other one. And so that was just a fun experience. And it eventually turned into Nick and I wrote a sequel to it, and it's called Another Mass Killer Movie. And so that might be one of the next movies that I direct. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Well, whatever. It made me laugh out loud. We were
But
rolling on the
I
floor.
did have one complaint, like a huge complaint in
Give
that
it.
movie.
We love feedback.
Why did the best character in the movie have to die first?
Was that me? Was that
Yeah.
me?
That's you.
It was such a good death scene, though. I just
Thank
want
you.
to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were like,
Yeah,
I wonder.
I know you guys can't see, but the crossbow that I was shot with is sitting right on the wall, right over there.
Oh, cool.
Hold on. Oh.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh,
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly like as you guys have known from the Hell House franchise, I've always been a performer, so I've always like been more of a sketch comedy guy. With Hell House, a lot of the me playing cameraman thing became a joke between Steve and I, but originally it was the cast is shooting everything, and when we got to that final sequence with Diane and Jonathan,
yeah.
he needed someone who actually knew how to shoot to catch the little corners of the things that you see Alex in the corner, you see a bunch of other people when they're walking through the house, and he wanted to have that like be a specific camera person to shoot that. So that's why he gave me that, and like then it led to another thing. Then it turned into me being the clown. And like I've realized that as like my career has gone along, I love these little things. Yeah, I know. I'm actually all the clowns. So, but I love these little things, and I love being like a little piece of it. And it's kind of been like my little like let me be a cameo. But I'm so grateful that you said that I'm good in it. Thank you. I think
Fun so much.
I wanted to play the most ridiculous, over the top character, and I think that was part of me being insecure.
Mission accomplished.
Wait.
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
was
I don't want to say it wrong. Hector Manuel Gonzalo Domingo
The third.
like,
You can
My,
call me
You can
Jay.
call me Jay.
my cinematographer in that, he's the same cinematographer who shot Lake of Fire. His name is Carlos Garcia de Dios, and like that was a running joke of the fact that like basically everyone that he knew from Spain has like an extremely long last name, and I was like, yeah, let's play with that.
That's so
So
awesome.
yeah.
And Joe, you know how we're like connoisseurs of filming locations?
Yes.
I found it.
Did you?
She's unbelievable.
Those people are
Anyway.
so sweet. They probably have the old like Seclusion or Cabin Fear poster in the house somewhere, I think.
Well, we're gonna probably find out because we were talking about it. We're like, ooh.
I think yeah, if you want to watch the old version and be like, man, that sucked. There you go. I think they have the DVD in their like
Wow.
people come and say
Wow.
that.
Well, just so that you know, we loved it
Thank you.
I loved it so much. I was just rolling on the floor. It's just
I loved it more the
hilarious.
second time. The first
Thank
time
you.
I watched it, I liked it. The second time, I loved it
It was just amazing.
because you just miss stuff. You have to see something more than once. You have
Yeah.
You know, the one of the things that Nick like made fun of me for was Nick was always like, listen, if there's a scene where everyone's talking and a lot of these things happen and there's two lulls where no one's talking, he's like, that's where the jokes need to be. Like because the audio is in the background, it's kind of like you're listening to the story, but when it dies down, then you could bring the background up and sort of have the audience hear the jokes of what's happening behind them. And so he's like, he's like, everything else is just fodder. We don't need to have anything in there. Me being the psycho that I am, I was like, no way. I'm writing the whole thing. Like I'm writing everything that's being said throughout this entire thing, just in case someone ever has the ability to like listen really closely, they'll hear more jokes. And like that, he was like, you're doing way too much work than you need to do. And I was like, no, I want to do this. So there's more things in there that are like almost impossible to hear. Um, but yeah, it's like
gotta watch it
You gotta
again.
watch it again.
That's
in the
right.
in the
Headphones on.
drive up when they're all talking about like how Grant and Danny didn't know one another or knew one another and how all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. The radio was talking about people getting killed in other cabins in the woods, and they talk about Friday the 13th. They talk about Evil Dead, and they talk about Hush. So like they're talking about the characters of all that stuff. And again, Nick was like, "No one cares about this." He's like, "Put it in the background."
No, that is, oh
Oh
my God,
no.
that was priceless.
And I knew it.
Thank
Didn't I
you.
tell you that? I said, I bet that was Joe's idea. I said, I knew it. That was your idea.
Listen,
Yeah.
I said, it was
I'm.
genius.
It was both of our idea. I give Nick came up with it with that meditation thing, and
All right.
I was like, I'm gonna run with this. So, I believe me, I am one of those
Perfect.
people that if someone else comes up with the idea, I want to give them credit for it.
Right.
When you make any of these low budget horror movies, so many ideas come from so many different things. And that's always the best part of working with such a great team because when you have a team that's usually like a hired gun that you're paying just to be on this movie, if they start getting creative and come up with ideas or whatever, you're kind of foolish if you're the leader to not listen. I mean, sure, with comedy, it's different because with comedy, it's so subjective. And like,
Mhm.
if you have a very specific style, if you start listening to a thousand other voices, it might go into different directions and not be what you need to be. And that's what I learned from that movie and that whole making of that process was trust your gut. You think something is funny,
Mhm.
go with what you think is funny. But you would be foolish to not listen and at least entertain the
Mhm.
ideas that people have, especially if they're volunteering them.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about holding the camera, for the Diane scene, and
Mhm.
I mean, I know most people probably know you play the clown, of course, but you've like literally been the cameraman for everybody. You were Diane's cameraman, Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
You were Brock's cameraman, Malcolm.
Malcolm. Yeah. I always forget that
Yeah,
name.
you were
Yeah.
Louis
Louis.
Louis. Yeah.
for Vanessa.
Vanessa's cameraman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the cameraman in what was his
Uh,
name? A25? Julian, right, right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you die too
Unfortunately,
much though.
unfortunately, Origins, I'm no longer a cameraman. And
yeah, that,
And you didn't die in Origins.
I know,
correct.
but here's the thing about you in Origins. Okay, when Chase, we're in the bedroom with Chase, and Chase is about to get it, and
Yeah.
You were the clown,
that
right?
Yeah.
movement of the head, that was you, right? That was
Yeah.
amazing.
That's so subtle, but it's so scary.
You know what's really cool? Steve and I talked about this a lot when we were talking about the clown. I remember when we were shooting. So the first movie, multiple people wore the clown costume. It was like I think Alex wore it at, not Alex, Danny wore it once,
Right.
Jared wore it once. It was like
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
whoever's not in the scene put the clown costume on, and we
Yeah.
shot multiple scares that weren't in. I know the director's cut and those special features has some of that stuff, but it was like, try this. Does it work with the clown? Does it not work with the clown? When the second movie came out and we realized people really liked the clown, that's when Steve was like, hey, like I want you to play the clown like for the movements and everything. And same happened in the third. I think the only time I didn't wear it in the third movie, one of our PAs, Johnny, wore it when I was on camera as Louis. That was the only time. But then when we got into, we walked away from the trilogy, we were done with Hell House, and then when we came back to it, Steve and I had been kind of chatting for years about the Abaddon tapes and potentially making this prequel
Yeah,
series.
yeah.
And one of the strings that we were going to pull on was like a backstory for eventually Patrick Carmichael and the clown. And I remember when we started that process, Steve started looking at actors to play the clown, like as Patrick as well as the clown himself. And I remember like he sent me a
Hmm.
list of people and he's like, who do you like? And I was like, I like me. And he was like, oh, he's like, I thought it was like it'd be more of a burden to you. And I was like, no, man. I'm like, listen, as we've gone along, like I actually enjoy playing the clown and being on set in a mask because when you're like, again, I think it's the filmmaker background or whatever. When we started with the clown things, I remember I was like, "Ooh, can the clown do this? Can the clown do this?" And Steve was always like, "No, I don't want the clown to be Pennywise or Art the Clown." He's like, "I want
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
it to be
right.
I think
subtle."
he said
Which
that
we
too.
love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. You're doing a whole new thing. But as we moved into Origins, and then now you guys will see in Lineage when it comes out, is I think a lot of the times because the clown kind of turns into set dressing and kind of just like this prop that gets put aside, is what would happen is we'd be on set, the script is written, we know how the scene is going, and I would get into the costume, I'd get into my position, and then it would be like 4 or 5 or 6 shots, especially when we're doing narrative, before I'm even seen. So I'm sitting there watching Steve talk with the actor, watching him work with the cinematographer, and I'm watching. And as I'm like watching and hearing him talk about how he's shooting it, I'm like, ooh, if he's doing that, it might be cool if I did this, or it might be cool if I did that. So what kind of has gone on and got, I think, better and better as we've made more of these is he never, doesn't really even need to tell me anything. He basically just says, this is where you're going to be. And then what I'll usually do is like the first take, I'll do it. Like by the time we shoot my coverage, I already know what I want to do, but I'll always do it the way he wrote it first.
Yeah.
And then we'll do a take of that, and then I'll be like, "Hey, can," and he'll be like, "Go for it." And then I'll start doing different things. And sometimes he's like, "No, I don't like that," or sometimes he's like, "Oh, yeah, that, do that. That's great." And so, like one of the things that I loved was at the end of Origins when Margot gets killed.
Yeah.
Um, Bridget, who plays Margot, was terrified of me whenever I put that costume on. And you guys stayed at Fern Hill or Fern Hall.
Yes. Fern Hall.
So you
Yeah.
know how all the bedrooms connect through the bathroom?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like we'd be shooting something in the hallway and like she'd be on one end and I'd be on one end. And then like Steve would yell cut and go give them notes. And I would just go into this like room and then go all the way around. And like so well he'd be talking to her and I'd just be standing behind her and I'd always scare the shit out of her. And so when we did her final kill, like in the script and the way Steve wanted it was just clown walks up to camera. And again, these things that I'm talking about are so subtle, but like I do walk up to the camera all the time. Like this, I'm like, what can I do? And I'm like, what would actually terrify Bridget and like make her feel scared is if I actually grabbed for her and like go for her face.
Yeah.
And like we already shot the whole thing with Chase's eyes like being all bloody or whatever. And
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna grab her and pop her eyes out. That's it. So I like went for her and I reached and she screamed and Steve yelled cut and he was like, that was awesome. Do that every time. And I was like, are you okay? I'm like, Bridget. And she's like, no, no, no. She's like, that's awesome. Do it. She's like, it scares the shit out of me. But
Yeah.
so like little things like that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
What was
The
that?
clock.
Oh, I
You
love
know,
it.
the Hell House
Not
clock.
familiar?
Yeah, I see. You guys are
At
awesome.
least it was two.
This one works though.
Okay. Is there any secrets or things hidden in them?
No. They
Okay.
might have been.
Yeah.
We actually got that from the antique store, Keystone Antiques.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're crazy.
You guys are real ones. You guys are real ones.
Yeah, we're something else. So how did you feel about? Oh, can I go?
Yeah. Is he finished with his thought? Because
I
the
think so.
clock interrupted.
Yeah.
That's
How
okay.
did you feel about switching from found footage to narrative?
I think originally I was the more resistant one for the two of them.
Yeah,
I think Steve, rightfully so. Like you guys know this. As much as Steve and I both love Hell House and always want to like our fans to be happy. Part of the reason why we're making this the last one, and part of the reason why we're sort of moving on for it is like we both have so many stories that we want to tell and so many things that we want to grow into. And I think one of the reasons why Steve chose this route was I think he just got tired of doing the same type of found
yeah,
footage scares. And so when he was writing this, a lot of them fit traditional narrative a little bit better. I think my initial reaction was, oh man, if we're going out like this, like we should go out with a found footage one to like really hit it home to have people be like, man, those guys knew how to do found footage. And then we moved on in our career and did other things. But the more I read the script and the more I talked with Steve, I could tell like Steve was really passionate about telling it traditionally and narrative. And if Steve wasn't going to be passionate about the scares, if he was doing it found footage, I don't think that would have worked. So I think I kind of came around to it. I was the last one to come around to it. And I think in general, I think just because we've done so much in found footage, I think this just being traditionally narrative is a very, very new way of showing how we can do Hell House movies. And
yeah,
I think fans are going to love that, and I think it's going to be really unique and really different. But that being said, traditional narrative usually has there's a lot more focus on the mistakes. Like with found footage, if you make mistakes in cinematography, production design, the way you're shooting it, the way you're directing it,
Yeah,
sometimes a lot of that is masked because it's not supposed to look
right,
pure.
exactly.
With narrative, you get a lot more focus on like the lighting didn't match there, or this doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense. But I think we did a really good job of keeping it clean and making it work within the Hell House world. And I think really, I do think a lot of the scares, because we changed the format, are scarier. So I think overall, it was a nice way for us to sort of say goodbye to the franchise and also creatively challenge ourselves.
Yeah, I think Steven said the way it was written, it really needed to be narrative, anyways.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense because I remember when he originally was like starting to do it, it was like, yeah, this scene, like, there's no way to make this scene found footage. Like, if we
Yeah,
just shoehorn and make this found footage, it won't make sense. And then people are going to be like, why the hell are they filming here? And we didn't want to do that.
yeah,
So,
Right. I think it's going to be very, very well received. The
I do
fans
too. I mean, the
are
story
already going crazy.
invested, so
Yeah, we've
yeah.
why
got
would you not watch?
a couple people, or at least one person in the group got a pre-screening, and they're obviously no spoilers by this person, but they're like,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
loved it. So I think it's going to be very, very well received. And for us, like Hell House is going to live on in infamy, right? It's never, the fan base is going to continue to stay, and
And
it's
Steve may not say this, but I always say never say never. And I also know that, like, when we say this is the last one, not only from a creative standpoint of moving on with our careers, it's also the style that we have made these movies in. It's getting really hard to make these movies this way continuously. And I think the format of how we make this, even the traditional narrative one, the only way we would ever be able to come back and revisit this is if we got a significantly bigger budget, because it's just the amount of work that goes into making these movies and the way we make them, it's just getting too big to make at the level that we're making them. And
yeah,
I think if we did ever have someone come around, like, I think Steve's going to be very particular with what the story would be should we ever do it again. But I think, we walked away from Lake of Fire with that intention of that being the last one we were ever going to make. So, and we came back. So I'm not saying this is like we're definitely going to come back, because I know, Steve's in pre-production on a
right.
film that he's working on. I'm in pre-production on a different film that I'm working on. And we're both kind of like, okay, cool. What's next? What's next? But, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, for all we know, we could get unlucky and everyone could hate everything that we do. And then we'd be like, all right, let's go make another Hell House.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't
he
know.
did say never say
He said
never.
it too.
He said he left it open,
He
so
did.
you could come back to it if you decided.
But he
Yeah.
was clear. He was clear, but he did say,
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus,
but
one of the things that Steve has always done really well, I was this is where Logic Police came in, is Steve always created breadcrumbs of where things could go. And my worry with that was you're never going to be able to answer all of the questions that we've sort of
Yeah.
posed. And
yeah,
like, even with this new movie, like, yes, we did leave it open, but there are things that aren't answered. And that was always my worry, because like I would always bring up Lost. I would be like, when Lost came out with their finale, they definitely did not answer some things, and people were pissed and people were upset about that. And now we're making a movie that's our last, and we're definitely leaving things open-ended. But also, like, I wish we could have made the Abaddon tapes, because the Abaddon tapes, we would have explored Tully in the 70s, in the 80s. Like, we would have been able to jump all through time. So I think, yeah, we're never say never. We are moving on, but we've had all of this amazing lore that Steve has built within the franchise. So if we ever did, like, maybe we're done telling Patrick Carmichael's story, or we're done telling, Vanessa's or this person's story, but there's other things that if we ever did come back to, I'm sure we could have fun with.
yeah. And I think your fans are going to follow you guys no matter where you go. We're really excited to see where both of your careers go. Joe, I've been looking a lot at your beginnings, your shorts that you did, and they were just so amazing. I just love everything. The Tuesday night, am I saying that right? Tuesday night or
Tuesday
Tuesday
nights.
nights?
Yeah, that was Joe doing drama.
I know, but dramedy, right? Because there's like
Yeah,
little nuggets of
yeah,
comedy
yeah,
laced in there, and
yeah.
they're very, very. I just really enjoyed them. So we're going to make sure that we post your information and
Thank
just
you.
encourage people to go look at your earlier stuff too, because it's really, really a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And
And like, and I think that's the thing is, we were really lucky with a lot of the things that happened with Hell House. Like, there was a lot of hard work. Our cast for this whole franchise has been incredible. That original cast, it was like they were like friends for 20 plus years, and they all are
Mhm.
friends now. Like there was we definitely did a lot of really good things, but we also, I don't think it's possible in this industry to like have success without luck playing a fact. And I feel like we kind of caught lightning in a bottle with that first one. It kind of opened doors for us. And I think the hopes are, as Steve and I continue to tell stories, like I said, the format of what we're making things definitely put handcuffs on us with a lot of things that we wanted to do, like not being able to do big period pieces, not being able to jump through time, not being able to do big, like, kill sequences or things that are like, we always tried not to do gory, but stuff that sort of was a little bit different. Um,
Mm.
we want to do some of those things and we want to grow. And the hopes are is that, we've done a decent enough job with the Hell House franchise that our fans trust us and know that like whatever we're doing, we are thinking of them and trying to make movies. Steve and I are both horror fans, so we try to make movies that we want to see. So
Right,
hopefully
right.
the hopes are is people like, you know, kind of join us on this journey as we continue.
Yeah, definitely. I know even in 825 Forest Road, and just having you as the cameraman again, even though it wasn't
Nice
separate from
callback,
Hell
right?
House, it was like a little nugget to the
Right.
fans, like a little
Yeah.
to the fans, right? I
Exactly.
thought that's what I thought.
That's 100% what it
And
was. Yeah.
you guys are so, so good to the fans. Just the way that you received us when we met you at Matt and Tim and Jacob's event out in Hollywood.
Right.
And you were just so warm to us. And and Steven and just everybody that we've met in the
But
series.
you guys are incredible too, and I keep saying this, like this is all very cyclical. Like you can't make something and be successful unless people are watching it. And because it's such a cult thing, it only works because people talk about it and people do what you guys are doing with me right now and with your Fanatics group and like we are not successful without the fans, and that's why I think why we try to keep them in mind so much with how we're doing things. And I think with Lineage, that was a big part of what we were doing. Like we really wanted to cater to the fans a lot in this. And I do think there are components of this that would be easy to follow along if this is the first movie you're watching in the Hell House franchise and you haven't been a fan previously. But I think for fans, it's going to be extra special because there's a lot of things that tie from the, kind of the new verse with Origins and Carmichael Manor into like the old
Mhm.
trilogy that I think
Mhm,
people will like.
mhm.
So are you involved in Steven's new, he told us about his new
A
film.
Body in the Woods.
Are
No,
you?
no. So Steve and I, we're tired of each other. No, I'm just kidding. No, like Steve had a really good opportunity come his way, and
Yeah.
I think he should take his shot and try to figure it out. And at the same time of like all of that happening, I had an opportunity come my way, and also, I'm about to be a dad, so the thing that I've realized is I'm always that person that has like six or seven things happening at one time. And I know that like as I transition into fatherhood, probably not going to be able to do as much. So I think this is like a really cool opportunity for, because you guys know this, but my main love is filmmaking, is writing and directing. And I've always said to Steve, if he ever wants me to produce anything he ever wants to do, I'll always be there for him. And he has a bunch of other producers who came on board. They're helping him with financing. So he's going to go do his thing, and I'm excited to see it. I've read the script. I love it. I really wish him so much success. But I don't think this is the last time. Steve and I will cross paths
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
again for sure. And Steve and I are also the type of people that like the business moves slow at times. And because of the fires, because of COVID, and because of all the strikes, things have kind of gotten to a place where, like, sometimes you're in development for years. And I just know Steve and I know myself, if we ever are put into one of those positions where we're doing something and it's taking years, we're both going to be like, let's go do something right fucking now. And I know that
Yeah.
whenever that happens, like, we'll probably, but like I said, I'm excited to see what he's going to do. And I know that when I'm in casting now for my movie, once we get rolling with that, I'm going to be really busy. So I think we're doing the right thing, and also I think at times it's good for people to sort of work with other people and see how other people work. But I know he'll miss me.
Of
Oh,
course,
there's
of
no doubt.
course.
I'll miss him.
Marcel's heading towards retirement. So if you need any old guys,
Oh yeah.
just say,
I can come
I'm
up with
sorry,
something.
you're not old.
I am old. It's okay. It's okay.
So yeah, so you want to ask your question about what's we got coming up? You got some things coming up, like date wise.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I do. Well, obviously the first thing and the biggest thing is Hell House. So Hell House Lineage comes out in theaters on August 20th, and
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys know, but there's a link for iconic events that you can sign up, and they'll tell you when it comes out.
Yes.
I think we're doing a week, but we always tell our fans like go fill those theaters because a week could turn into a lot more should things go the right way. But that, and then I think we'll probably have an IFC premiere in New York sometimes in September or October
Oh,
before it
Oh,
comes out.
God, we're
see,
so
I
hoping.
that's
think
what,
so. I think so. We did that for Origins. We
Right,
probably
we
yes.
missed it. Oh,
We were
yeah.
like, we just like could not go. We were somewhere that we could not come.
That
But
was
we were like, oh,
It
we
was a
will
cool
want to be there.
experience. Yeah, it was a cool
Yeah.
experience. And it's like, we love when the cast and crew can come together and see their work and everything. And that was one of the things, I'm sure you guys heard this story about how like we almost had a limited theatrical release with Origins, and then Taylor Swift announced her Eras tour, and then we sort of lost our I don't blame her. I get it. Like theaters historically have been doing worse and worse and worse over time. And I think when you have a moneymaker that you know is going to sell out, like you have to go with that. And but that being said, one of the biggest disappointments that Steve and I both had was that cast from Hell House Origins, Bridget, Destiny, Victoria, Kayla, all of them. They were so incredible and they were such hard workers. And like we would have loved for their movie to be on the screen. And because
Yes.
of that, we couldn't. So now that this one's coming out, like most of them are in it. And so it's like we just are really happy that the people who put the work into this get to see the work come
That's
to the big
amazing.
screen.
yeah, I mean, can't believe when Joe Dane asked, because Joe Dane put out a thing about asking how people felt about theatrical release. Like, hell
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
all of them
Yeah.
should have
We
been.
were like,
right.
yes. Yeah. And
Yeah,
everybody else was like, yes, yes, let's do this.
yeah.
So
So yeah, so that's like the big thing that's coming out.
Yeah,
At the end of last year, I produced a movie called Imposters that stars Jessica Roth and Charlie Barnett. We are in like final stages of post production, so I'm not sure where that's going to come out yet, but that'll most likely be out towards the end of the year. Um, And then the things that I am working, I have a short that I directed a year ago that's in a couple festivals called The Sequence. But then I have two movies that I'm in pre-production on. One of them is a movie called The Hunted. It's about a girl who goes to a family reunion, and there's some shenanigans and things going on there while her family is being stalked by a masked killer. And then I have what would be eventually the follow-up to another Cabin in the Woods movie called Another Masked Killer Movie, which instead of playing a little bit on the straight side, that's like a full-on spoof where kind
yes.
of instead of messing with Cabin in the Woods genre, we're messing with the masked killer whodunit genre. So
Cool.
that is
That
cool.
all sounds so
yeah.
cool.
And
And now, also August 15 through the 17th,
right, we
you're
will
going
be
to be at the
you guys
Midsummer.
you
What's it
guys
called?
should just
I have it
promote
right
this
here.
more than I would. You're better at this.
The
Yeah, it's at the
Midsummer Scream,
Midsummer
right?
Scream at the Long Beach Convention Center. I believe
Yes.
Summer Scream is 15th through the 17th, and we have our panel on the 17th.
Yes.
For anyone who does come in person, we're going to release the first 10 minutes of Hell House Lineage.
Yeah, we did hear that.
We
Yeah.
are going to be there
Yeah.
and we got VIP tickets. So we will be right. We will be there. We're so excited.
We wouldn't want it any other way.
We're
So
beside ourselves with this with excitement. I heard there might be some giveaways too. So I was like, oh yeah.
will be.
Giveaway.
There will be. Yeah. So
It's
yeah,
not
I think
always about you,
of course it can be.
man.
No, but
Um,
it's so exciting. We just so that you know, like when we go to horror cons and horror conventions, we're always like we're seeking out Hell House,
yeah. You
rep.
know, Midsummer Scream has been really interesting because I've been there for the last 2 years. This is going to be my third year going. Last year, the what is it? I forgot the name of the podcast, but Avotris Littles, who's our host for the panel this year, she did a how does this get made kind of producer version
Mhm.
last year. So she had six producers come on, and I was one of the producers, and we sort of kind of promoted things and talked about how we make movies and low budget and all that kind of stuff. And then the year prior was right before Carmichael Manor came out. And I was like, and that's right when we started selling the masks. So basically, my wife, Devin, she dressed up in a clown, like she made a custom clown dress, and she was going out and handing out cards for the mask. And me being the creep weirdo that I am, I just when I'm in that thing and in that mask and I'm in character, it's so claustrophobic because it's like no one can hear me when I'm talking if I'm trying to talk to them. So I just like to like be like I grew up going to haunted houses and always like, when you go to haunted houses and you're a little kid, there's always that one person who like locks eyes with you and just kind of follows you around and creeps you out. So I try to do that. So I like went in the middle of like the haunted houses maze section and I
Hmm.
stood in like a really dark area and I just stood there for hours and I would just follow people with my eyes to the point that they'd be like, "Is that clown watching us?" And like I would just do that and just creep people out. And then people would either be like, "Oh my God, we love you. Can we take pictures with you?" Someone had a 1 week old baby there and wanted their 1 week old baby to be in a photo with me, which was hilarious.
Oh
So we
my
did
God.
that, and then of course, for those who weren't fans, Devin would be like, "Hey, you should go check this out. It's on Prime, it's on Shutter, it's on this," and so she's our little marketing machine.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
You're right though. It is hard to breathe on that thing.
Yeah,
Very.
he
I don't
puts
know how you
on.
do it for a long, for long periods
I
of
will.
time.
I will say this. I don't know. I'll tell you this: of the three clowns that are behind you, you have our original Hell House LLC clown. That mask is like, yeah, it feels it's like a part of my personality. But of the other two, the one with the one with the bleeding ears, the one in
Yeah.
the
Yes.
middle, that mask, when we had it created, was so perfectly molded to my face that like that clown has a bigger role in this new movie that's coming out. But I'm telling you, like it felt like it was my face. Like it felt like it was
Wow.
me when I was like wearing that. And I think there's a lot of cool scares with that clown in this new movie. And I feel like I was more emotionally connected to it because it was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
felt like it was me. So
And that's cool.
Was that intentional about the
That we
about? Yeah, go ahead.
we
Go
knew
ahead.
exactly what you're going to say because we
Yeah.
had somebody in the group say, and we all were like, "Whoa!" They said bleeding from the eyes, bleeding from the ears, and bleeding from the mouth. So the
do you want to know how
whole
that came about?
So it
yes,
is intentional.
100% intentional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when we started getting ready in pre-production for the Carmichael Manor, I had always told Steve like long ago because I had always seen all the marketing for Art the Clown and Terrifier, and I was like, why are we not doing that?
yeah,
And I found out why we weren't doing that. But basically, since the second one on, I would always say to Steve like, we should do this, we should, and he was always like, no, 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 don't worry about it. But I don't know if you guys know this, but the way the Hell House Clown came about was very similar to how the Michael Myers mask came about in Halloween, which is someone else's mask and us modifying it. And so
right.
basically, when we made the first one, Steve had a custom mask made for us, and it didn't come out the way we wanted it to. And so Angie had this mask, and she was like, "Here, why don't you use this?" And we had our special effects person make the blood coming out of the eyes and make it
Hmm.
creepier. And so I always wanted to like get into some type of like, let's start selling this, let's merchandise it. Steve never wanted to, and I found out later he never wanted to because he was always afraid that the original mask maker was going to find out and sue us. And so that's why he didn't want to like, and rightfully so, but I'm a persistent person. So when we were getting ready to do Carmichael Manor, I had, met with a lot of different mask companies, and one of them, which is Ruby's, which is like one of the biggest mask companies in the country, they were like, "Hey, we don't think your movie and your masks are big that we would do like an Art the Clown type thing, but we know a company that's a little bit more like lower, doesn't do it as big as we do, and we'd love to put you in touch with them." And so I met Bishop and Jasmine from Blast from the Past Mask Company
Hmm.
in Ohio. And I went out to them and I met with them and everything. And I was like, the biggest concern that I had wasn't just from a merchandising perspective. It was the same clown mask that we wore in one, two, three, and that Angie uses every year in her haunt was the only clown mask. So every time we finished shooting, Angie would keep the mask and she would use it. And every year I would like basically have a panic attack of like, if one of her actors stole it, if someone came and stole it, like, what are we going to do? So I was working with this guy Bishop, and Bishop was like, send me all the pictures you can of it before you come out here. And by the time I got out there with the original mask, he already had a 3D scan and print of exactly what it was, and he was going to use like the best latex to recreate it. And so he was recreating the mask for us, and I told Steve. And the best part about this, which was my favorite part, was I told Bishop that I didn't know I tracked who was the original mask maker, and whoever was the company that was making that mask must have turned into politics because their website was no longer a mask website. It was like a very political, like a lot of comments on like whatever was going on politically at the time. And so I was like, I don't think they do this anymore. And Bishop, he's like, I know everyone, let me figure it out. he not only found out who the creator of the mask was, he got him to sign the rights over to Steve and I. And so
Cool.
now
Wow.
we own the mask. And we own all of these masks. So it was like, okay, cool, we can go into this and figure this out. And then at that point, Steve gave me the script for Carmichael Manor, and Steve wrote into the script two other clowns, but he wrote them as generic, just like he did with the first one, where we had those two other clowns in the basement with the Hell House,
Mhm.
Right.
and it was just another clown mask or whatever. And so I went to Bishop and I was like, hey, I was like, could we do something that like plays and has some fun, like so that they're all kind of from the same family? And he's like, let me think on it. And then like a week later, he sent me sketches and he's like, why don't we do the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil thing? And I was like, that's awesome. I was like, I'm not going to show Steve, but can you make these first? And he made them, and then I sent them to Steve, and Steve was like, "Holy shit, these are incredible!" And
Yeah, they are.
rewrote a lot of
Yes.
the scares in Carmichael Manor to sort of kind of fit those clowns and have them be as a part of the family. And like that's where a lot of the stuff kind of that's where he like went with the story of having all the clowns come together and be a part of the same thing. And so it a lot of creativity with the story. But we have Bishop to thank for that because he was the one who recommended that, and I was like 100%. And I'm also the type
That
of
is
person where like
awesome.
I didn't want to go to Steve and be like, "Hey, do you think maybe we could do this?" I was like, "We're just gonna do it, and then I'm gonna show you," and it worked out.
No, that's great.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, we better let you go.
Yeah, we should let you off the hook.
I swear, we could talk all
You
day.
gave us so much time. We appreciate it so
Of
much.
course. Of
We're
course. Thank you
so,
guys.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. You not only like as fans of the franchise, but you guys are amazing people and you guys always do right by us. And obviously anything that we can do to do right by you, we're always going to help as much as we can. So I cannot thank you guys enough. And I hope you guys like the new movie. I think you're going to like the new movie, but I
Yeah.
We're gonna love the
I'm
new
sure.
movie. We're gonna love it.
there's nothing better than having your fans go into a movie knowing they're going to love it before they
Oh,
see it. So
yeah, we're gonna love it so much. And so, yes, congratulations to you. Happy early Father's Day. We're
Yep.
not a father yet, but it's coming, right?
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
you are a father, but
I'm a cat father at
yes.
this point.
Yeah.
But soon that'll transition into a human father.
Yeah, we're so excited for you. Just a wonderful phase that you're going into. It's just amazing.
Yep.
And
Tell Devin we said
yeah,
hello.
tell
I
her.
will. I will. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And we'll
Of
see
course.
you in
Yeah, we'll see you in August.
See you in August.
All right.
Take it easy, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.